Welcome to one of the most commonly asked questions. What is a purchase contract? A purchase contract is a real estate contract, which is a binding agreement usually between two parties, the buyer and the seller, for the transaction of a home or other property. The parties must both have the legal capacity to make the purchase, exchange, or conveyance of the real property in question. And the contract is based on a legal consideration, which is whatever is being exchanged for the real estate. It's almost always a certain amount of money, but consideration could also be other property or a promise to pay or a given amount of money later. When it comes to real estate, the law states the contract must be in writing in order for it to be valid. If a contract to purchase real estate is not written and signed by both parties, the buyer and the seller, it is not enforceable. Handshakes and verbal commitments are not enough. The purpose is to prevent fraud and avoid situations where a court has to believe the word of one party over another. If it isn't in writing, it does not exist. If you getting ready to place an offer on a property, your real estate agent will go over the purchase contract that you will be signing. Both parties will be signing. Components, let's talk about components to the purchase contract. Some things that's part of that contract are identification of both parties, the buyer and the seller, a description of the property, essential details, rights, and obligations of the contract. Contingencies are conditions that must be met before the sale can go through. The condition of the property, which fixtures and appliances are included in the sale and which are excluded in the sale. Also, the amount of earnest money deposit, which is an itemized closing cost, and who is responsible for paying them. Prospective date of closing, signatures of each party, and lastly, terms of possession, when the keys to the property will be handed over. Now, I want to bring up contingencies. Let's go back, which was explained in another video. So, the list of contingencies might include a loan contingency, which provides details on the type of loan the buyer intends to arrange for and allows them to get out of the contract if they are unable to obtain that financing. That's important. An inspection contingency allows the buyer to cancel the purchase if their professional home inspector, house inspector finds significant problems with the home. The buyer can ask the seller to accept a lower purchase price, or to make certain repairs that will be costly to the buyer or a matter of health and safety. Now, in some states, home inspections are completed in advance of executing a final purchase contract. So, an inspection would not be listed as a contingency. Just wanted to throw that out there. There is also a chance that the sale is contingent on another real estate transaction taking place before this one. For instance, the buyer might say they won't be able to complete the purchase until they have first sold their own home. So if they have a home, they're trying to buy another one, they have to sell their first home, that's a contingency. The mortgage company typically requires the buyer to get an appraisal to determine whether the home is worth what the buyer has agreed to pay. Next, let's talk about the earnest money deposit. We've talked about this before. I've mentioned this in a video before. Your earnest money deposit is when the buyer signs the contract. They often pay a small amount, generally between 1 to 3% of the home selling price. to indicate they are serious about purchasing that home. The money is held in an escrow until closing by a third party, such as it could be the seller's real estate attorney, or normally we use the title company. The amount should be specified in the contract, and the money is credited toward the final negotiated purchase price. Most people apply it to the down payment or closing costs. One last thing I want to hear him say. One last thing I want to mention is closing costs. The type of closing cost and the party who's responsible for them vary from state to state, but they typically amount to 2 to 5% of the purchase price of the home. This includes taxes and fees related to the transfer of the property, such as the recording of the deed and payment to the title company, the title company conducts the research to trace the chain of ownership of that property that you're about to purchase, and to make sure no one has a monetary or ownership claim on it. The title company also offers title insurance, and what that does is it protects you, the buyer, against any future claims. The real estate agent's commission is an additional cost at closing, and it usually amounts to around 6% of the purchase price or less. As always, I want to thank you for watching, and if this video was also helpful for you, please share it. Have any questions, give me a call, 504-345-8282.